It's December 1st, 2025, and we have now entered the start of meteorological winter, the coldest 3 months of the year. And as we head through the next few weeks, cold air will continue to surge out of southern Canada, allowing for some early season snow for parts of the country. But who may end up with a white Christmas and who could miss out on one? I'll have more on that and who may see the bigger storms this month in this video forecast. So as we take a look at the current snow depth, there's a decent amount of snow across a good portion of North America here, including snow through most of the northern US. This is a little ahead of schedule in some places, especially for parts of the Plains, Midwest, and even the Northeast. And through this upcoming week, we actually see more opportunities of snow, especially for the Northeast. Places like southern New England that haven't seen a whole lot of snow so far this season could see the first snowfall. But we go back across the Rockies where things are a little behind. Ski resorts are opening late, and this could continue to be a problem as we push through December, as it looks like the colder air will remain over the Midwest and Plains, and even the Northeast and outside of places like the Rockies and West Coast. And through the next several days, our winter storms will remain in the Midwest and Northeast for the most part. There may be some that come into the Pacific Northwest, but you can see where the storm generation comes in from the Gulf going up into parts of the Northeast and then from southern Canada going into the Midwest. We do at least have a chance of seeing a few storms this month across the Rockies and West Coast, but most likely will feature some warmer air than normal, so that will cut into some of the snow totals. So let's take a look at the bigger picture here and go up to the North Pole where we find the polar vortex. So far has been relatively strong this season, but a weaker polar vortex does allow the cold air to spill to the south. Occasionally, you'll notice some surges of warm air between Alaska and Russia start to push northward. That will disrupt the polar vortex a bit and send some of the colder air south into parts of North America. We'll see one wave this week, potentially into next week as well. Nothing too strong, but at least it'll drop temperatures below average for a significant portion of the country. We'll see this a few times through the winter, as is typical of most winter seasons. Through the next few weeks, you can see where the core of the cold air will be hanging out, generally across parts of the Midwest and Northeast. A lot of these temperatures are colder than average as well, so this will allow opportunities for some snow, but it does come with occasional warm-ups. We will see one most likely as we head towards the middle of the month and potentially the end of the month as well, as the West Coast and Rockies get a little bit of cold air and potentially a bit of snow as well. And you can see this pretty clearly demonstrated here with colder than average and warmer than average temperatures across the U.S. The blue and purple colors hanging out across the Midwest and Northeast most of the next few weeks here, while the West Coast and Rockies will be slightly or well above average from time to time. So this will allow or prevent storm systems from producing snow across parts of the country as we head through the next few weeks here. So heading into the second week of December, we will see that cold air hanging out over the eastern U.S. This will be courtesy of a trough coming in out of southern Canada or a dip in the jet stream, which will prevent warmer air from coming in from the south. Meanwhile, a ridge will be built over the West Coast, and that's why we'll continue to see warmer than average temperatures there. This pattern does lessen up slightly through the second week of December, where we will eventually see some warmer than average conditions try to push eastward, but still solidly locked into this pattern at least until December 14th. Towards the end of December, the warmer than average conditions will try to work their way eastward, still somewhat struggle to do so, but it does get a little less warm across the West Coast and Rockies. This will allow for at least a system or two to produce snow out there. Meanwhile, across the Midwest and Northeast, we're still solidly locked in here to the colder than average conditions and most likely snow, according to NOAA's forecast, through the end of the month. However, what may start off as a drier than average start to the month of December for the West Coast and Rockies will become more closer to average as a few storm systems work their way in. Meanwhile, across the Northeast and Midwest, still more storm systems will come into the area. Not every storm system will be snow, but there will be a few that do produce significant snow across the region. Meanwhile, across the south, things will be drier than average and also warmer than average. So the pattern we have right now is pretty indicative of a La Nina pattern, which in general looks like this. We have a ridge across parts of the West Coast and Rockies going up into parts of southern Canada as the jet pushes northward and then downstream dips. That is a trough, which allows colder than average conditions to work their way from southern Canada into the US. That collides with wetter than average conditions as storm systems build across the Ohio Valley and then push into the Northeast. We pretty much have a stereotypical version of this pattern right now, and most likely will stick to this pattern as we head into early January. And the reason for the La Nina pattern is, of course, cooler than average water temperatures in the eastern Pacific. This causes pressure systems to adjust, leading to the pattern that we'll have over the next several weeks. So given the persistence of the La Nina pattern and the fact we have early season snowfall across a good portion of the Midwest and Northeast, I do think we'll stick with below average temperatures across this region most of the month of December, and even well below average temperatures right along the Canadian border for several of these states. Meanwhile, we head over to the southwest, where temperatures are expected to be well above average in this area due to high pressure that will be sticking to this region most of the month. And we get a good portion of the west coast going through the Rockies all the way to Florida that will stick with slightly above average temperatures, as is pretty typical in these areas when we have a La Nina in place. And as we take a look at the precipitation outlook, this doesn't quite match a typical La Nina pattern, as we do have several other global patterns at play that will dictate the precipitation through December. We do have above average precipitation expected for a good portion of the southeast. This will most likely be rain in the forecast here as storm systems develop in this area and then push into the northeast, which will be a mix of rain, sleet, and snow for parts of the northeast. And then we go back through the Midwest, where we'll have developing storm systems and also clipper systems from southern Canada moving through this region, causing both a mix of rain, sleet, and snow, but mainly snow for this region. And then we go out to the northwest, we'll have bigger storm systems coming in from the Pacific that will affect parts of the northwest, but really into concentrated areas there, while the rest of the west coast will remain dry, if not well below average in some areas, especially for southern parts of Arizona and New Mexico. In terms of snowfall, I do think we'll continue to see some above average snow conditions through parts of the Midwest and Northeast. This is because things will continue to be active in these regions, and also will have below average temperatures in place. This will allow for not only lake effect snow, but a few larger winter storms to move through the region. We'll also have above average snow for parts of the Rockies stretching from Montana into northwest Colorado. But for the rest of the Rockies, stretching from the Cascades through the Sierra Nevada down into parts of Arizona and Utah, we'll likely see below average snowfall in this area, as we will continue to see above normal temperatures and drier conditions due to the La Nina pattern. And if you're curious how all this would factor into a white Christmas towards the end of the month, we still have a lot of uncertainty to work out here, but I do think there's a good shot at seeing a white Christmas through the northern plains, as there usually is, but no major warm-ups expected to knock it out this year. However, for parts of the Midwest, especially for the Chicago area, Detroit, potentially even into parts of Pennsylvania and New York, it's possible, although there will be a warm-up right before Christmas, which I do think will take out a significant portion of the snow through parts of the plains and even the central plains that could have snow several days earlier. That could knock it out. And for also parts of the Northeast, specifically southern New England, New York, and New Jersey, it's going to be real iffy this year, but it's possible that we could see it in parts of the areas highlighted in white here. And notice how the West Coast not doing too well for snow, and I do think right before Christmas there'll be yet another warm-up on the way, but just at about Christmas time and a few days after, right now we could see the pattern become more active and things become colder, so maybe we could see a winter storm around this time frame that would change this map, which I will update this map again as we get closer to Christmas time, so stay tuned for that video update as well. But as we progress into the winter season, the pattern will be changing. We'll go from La Nina into ENSO neutral. At least that's what's forecasted here. And that will change things as we push towards the end of winter, which could set the stage for some bigger storms and even more cold air outbreaks. So as we head deeper into winter, we're expected to have an ENSO neutral pattern, which is neither warmer than average or colder than average water temperatures in the eastern Pacific. This will allow the pattern to become a little more erratic as we push towards the end of winter, which will allow more clashes between warmer and colder than average air masses, and potentially allowing the polar vortex to come even farther to the south, which could lead to some bigger snowstorms in parts of the country, specifically the Northeast. This is why we're likely to see above average snowfall for a good portion portion of the Northeast as this pattern later in the winter starts to come in line. And unfortunately for the West Coast, ENSO neutral doesn't really increase your snow totals. If you want to see more snow in the Rockies or have any ski trips out there, I do think earlier in the season, believe it or not, will be better than later in the season because La Nina can at least give you a few snowstorms out there where ENSO neutral, it becomes a little tougher. And if you didn't catch our winter outlook videos, I'm still thinking the forecast stays pretty consistent here with colder than average temperatures across a good portion of the plains, Midwest, and Northeast, and then warmer than average temperatures across a good portion of the South, stretching from the West Coast all the way into parts of the Southeast, including Florida and Georgia. And in between, we'll have average conditions stretching from the Northwest all the way into the Mid-Atlantic and even parts of the immediate East Coast. This is also the storm setup we're expecting, which we're already seeing in December so far, although we haven't seen severe weather quite yet, which is a good thing across parts of the Southeast. I do think there's still a chance for that, in addition to some ice storms that we could potentially see as well as we get deeper into winter. We'll also see an increase of nor'easter activity, which we haven't quite seen yet, but the ingredients are there later in the winter for that to happen. And then across the West Coast, similar forecast again, drier than average conditions expected. This is our snowfall forecast for the rest of the winter, still expecting to see above average totals for a good portion of the Midwest going into the Northeast, specifically parts of New York State. I do think will get hammered later this season, so stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, along the West Coast, specifically through the Sierra Nevada, below average snowfall is still expected as we head through the rest of the season. But if you're a snow lover and want to get your snow fix right away, there's a big storm system that'll be impacting the Northeast on Tuesday, which will pile up several inches of snow as it moves through the Northeast and New England. So if you're looking forward to some winter weather and want it right away, that will be the place you need to head to as we head through the next couple of days. And if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out more of our forecasts on the screen over here, and I'll see you in the next forecast update.